everybody. Welcome to Impossible Coin. I'm Brian, and I am joined by Rocky Hardy, Tegan Somerset, and I'm going to dispense with our usual shenanigans of making wild claims about where you're from or whatever the hell you're doing, because once again, we have a guest. We have another interview. We are joined by Addy Starr. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
So, I guess I made the brilliant decision to book a wrestler on the show and to not talk wrestling at all.
Yeah, I mean, if it does come down to it, I don't mind going into it, but it's kind of cool to do something that's not about wrestling.
Well, because of your professional background, you were able to, speak to something that I find to be very, very interesting in the context of what we're facing right now, which is what does the pandemic mean for education? I come from a family of teachers. My mother was a teacher. My grandmother was a teacher. My sister is a teacher. And so, I'm pretty invested in what this means for education. And also, we are primarily a podcast about video games. And you have just started leaping into Twitch. I think that comes on the heels of a negative experience with Patreon, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, I had a Patreon for probably, I want to say, 72 hours. And it was such a negative experience in terms of the interactions and what people were asking for that I shut it down almost immediately. And I've been trying to find something else to kind of dive into to interact with people and my fans and other people out there. So Twitch seemed like a great idea. And so far it's real fun.
Well, cool. So today we're going to primarily talk about education and video games, and I just want to, probably quench my own curiosity on the whole Lego thing, too.
Yeah.
That's what we'll be talking about today.
Perfect.
So, outside of the context of wrestling, can you give people a little bit of background, why in the world would we want to talk education with you?
Okay, so I am a professional wrestler, like you've mentioned, but I am one of the wrestlers that has a day job. I have been in education for the past, I want to say professionally 8-9 years. And then I have a Bachelor of Education from the University of Ottawa in Canada. I'm from Canada. And then I have a Bachelor of Arts in Second Language Education and French Literature and English Literature. So quite a lot going on there. So my qualifications are teaching intermediate and senior, which is ages 11 to 18. I'm qualified for English and French. And I have a little bit of experience teaching sort of younger grades. I got a job somehow teaching grades 5 and 6 last year. And I taught all things from math, social studies, science, dance was great. So I have experience in the classroom. I've taught in a lot of different settings. My primary experience is actually teaching in the UK, which is super interesting in comparing to different school systems around the world, because I taught briefly in the United States as well. I've taught in Canada now for the last little bit. So I'm by no means an academic expert, all-knowing person. But I have the sort of hands-on experience that I think a lot of people are looking for right now, because it's a lot of uncertainty and people are suddenly finding that they have to become a teacher to their children.
Right.
So there's a lot of people turning to me right now.
So as we start dealing with this in a really meaningful way, a lot of educators who are having to deal with distance learning, who maybe are naturally Luddites or who have never really engaged with distance learning just because of their preferences in the past or what used to be the norm for their educational institution, which means that there's people who are now being charged with teaching who themselves have no experience with distance teaching. What do you think that institutions and professional networks can do to prepare those people to be more effective distance teachers? And can you teach distance teaching through distance teaching?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because a huge amount of professional development these days is actually done online anyway. It's very rare that schools and boards, especially in Canada where we're kind of strapped for cash. I don't know what it's like in the States. I imagine that everyone is strapped for cash at the school boards in the States too.
More or less.
Yeah. So it's pretty rare that we ever get sent to in-person professional development anyway. I remember when I was teaching in the UK, I was teaching the International Baccalaureate program, which is kind of this like specialized program that's sort of like a worldwide qualification. It's super interesting. And you have to get specialized training in order to teach it. So in the UK, you know, it's fairly easy to go to the places where they hold these training sessions, which is places like Berlin and Prague and Barcelona, which sounds super exotic, but it's like a 2-hour flight from London. And even then, I was still doing online courses rather than going in person. So it's important for teachers to kind of realize that this is actually kind of the norm. It's not something to be afraid of in terms of like learning how to adapt to this situation. It's also kind of like looking at what distance learning means, like the definition of distance learning. Is it simply that we're not in a classroom with the students, or does it mean like relying entirely on technology? Does it mean that they watch videos every single day? I think that teachers have to kind of make that definition for themselves and kind of like stick to it, because just like having a classroom, it's so important to have routine for your students. So if you one day are like, okay, I'm going to do like a whole bunch of videos, and then the next day you're like going to send a whole bunch of worksheets, and then the next day you're like, okay, go out and do this project. Like the kids are going to feel really freaked out by that, and they're going to have no idea how to handle it. And looking at it as almost like an opportunity, because there's a ton of teachers out there who have been in the profession for, God, like 30, 40 years who are reluctant to use this kind of technology, who maybe have done it for so long a certain way and you know, don't fix what's not broken. But now it's like, okay, you have an opportunity to learn how to use something like Zoom, or you have an opportunity to learn how to use Google Docs. Take it as a positive thing. And I think that's how boards also can frame it to teachers by saying like, look, we have all these opportunities to now use this amazing technology. Like if this had happened in like 1995, we would have all been screwed. But we're really lucky that we have it now and we can do it this way. So that's kind of like what I've been telling a lot of the people that have been discussing this with me, is that we're fortunate, look at it as positive, and define for yourself what it means.
Do you think that distance learning is something that will ultimately become part of a teacher's repertoire? Like, do you think it'll affect teacher training in the future? Do you think it'll be something that will be integrated into education programs more ubiquitously?
I think it will. I think it will always try to keep kids in the classroom as much as possible, because there's so many reasons why we want kids in the classroom. But I think it will become more normalized in terms of something that we'll be training for, definitely. I know in the UK we have a lot of what's called school refusing. I don't know, again, if that's something that happens in the States, where kids
might have a different name.
Yeah, do you have a different name for it?
I'm not sure. Can you describe it a bit more?
So it's like we have students that are maybe quite vulnerable and they are making bad choices and risk-taking behavior, and they decide not to go to school, and their parents can't physically force them into school. I know my mom would have, but like most kids, not really. So we have kids who are literally not coming into school because they're refusing to. And we are expected as teachers in the UK to provide work for them through distance learning. So I think with things like anxiety and mental health becoming more and more prevalent and common and more commonly diagnosed amongst especially like teenagers, it will be part of teacher training to do distance learning now that we have had this experience and know that we are wildly unprepared.
One of the problems that we've had pretty rampantly in the United States over the last 15 years is distance learning institutions that were set up for rather unscrupulous reasons. These are colleges that like lost accreditation. People had degrees that the values of them were washed away. And these were primarily like for-profit colleges. And I'm wondering if one of the things that might have, created as much resistance as there was toward like moving toward this is like a, just one of the tools in a teacher's toolbox and something that schools embrace more readily is that for-profit abuse that has occurred in the United States. Like, is distance learning something which is more readily accepted outside of the US? And have you seen any kind of like similar problems with, for-profit institutions souring people's opinions outside of the US? Like,
yeah, I know exactly what you mean by the ones in the States. Like,
yeah.
they're kind of this like running joke amongst teachers a little bit.
Right.
We have some similar things in Canada. We've got, especially for international students, we have some for-profit distance learning that takes place. And I know that people have tried to recruit me for these kinds of schools when I first got back to Canada. I don't think it's as bad. And I think that that's one of the reasons, yes, why people are a little bit concerned about distance learning is just because they can't validate a lot of who's on the other end, what's going to be the results. But to me, that kind of feeds into this whole hesitancy we had about distance working as well, Like, I'm currently working from home in my current position, and a lot of people are like saying that, they're in the same position and their employers are checking in on them constantly. Like, are you doing the work? Are you actually getting things done? Are you being productive? And I think we still have that mentality even towards like kids. And we're like, well, if we don't have them in the classroom, how do we know they're doing anything? How do we know that they're going to get all this finished and make progress they need to make? So there's so many factors that are keeping people from seeing that distance learning can actually be super beneficial to some people. But again, I'm one of these like disgustingly, sickeningly positive people. And I'm like looking at this going, well, at least we might have people looking at distance learning now and seeing, actually, we did still make some progress. Kids actually did okay considering how unprepared and how little we had ready for this. So maybe it's not the worst thing. So that's kind of like my positive take from it.
Okay. I hate to drag this back to being U.S. centric for a second, but one of the things that came to mind for me is a result of our like political and social climate, and how very much in like red leaning states in the U.S. there is this desire to, in education, measure everything through standardized testing. Batteries and batteries and batteries have standardized tests by grade, and the way the value of an educational system gets measured is through the standardized test. The way teachers get evaluated is by, pass rates of their students on standardized tests. And when this struck and all the students started having to go home, one of the things I worried about was whether or not this would either accelerate or legitimize the desire by policymakers to measure education that way.
Mm-hmm. It's actually interesting because in the UK, it's exactly the same. They love a standardized test. They love them. And it was super weird for me coming from Canada where I did my training, because Canada's very much the opposite. We have, I think, like 2 or 3 standardized tests the entire time we're in school. And then everything else is kind of like by merit-based work from the teachers and everything. So in the UK, all the students have to finish their education with a standardized test for every subject. And that's basically how we rank teachers and we decide if they've been successful or not. And I actually was marking these standardized tests. You can sign up and you can become someone who marks these tests. And I got emails about it this year because obviously schools are closed in the UK as well. And they're like, we're actually going to allow the teachers to assign marks based on what they have done so far and in their distance learning. So the reality is that it actually went away from standardized testing in the UK. Now, I don't know if the states will do that considering the administration and government policies and things like that. But I think there's an argument looking towards the UK and seeing what they've done and how they've moved away from it for exactly that reason. There's no way that we can assure that all students are making the same progress and doing the same thing when we are not there to see them all together in the same setting. It's just not fair. Yeah.
So I guess it does raise the question of what should grading look like in this environment? And are the ideas of how grading should be handled right now, should that be different based on age group or any other different classifications?
Well, I think it's going to be a lot of work for teachers because it's going to end up being a lot more individualized assignments because we have to understand what resources students have at home. We can't expect that every single kid's going to have, an iPad and a nice camera to do some videos. And we can't even expect that a kid is going to have access to a laptop all the time just to write some work out, I taught a kid who lives on a boat and he didn't even have access to a bathroom all the time. So like you literally have to assume that they've got like bare minimum materials unless they tell you otherwise. So I'm envisioning a whole lot of students being given assignments with like multiple ways of going about it. And then teachers are going to have to do a lot more in terms of, deciding how they're going to be grading this on an individual basis rather than a sort of like a group setting like they're used to. So it'll be more work for them.
Okay. And that speaks to grading and, taking a more individual approach for that. But schools are so much more than that. They are these social places, and there's a lot of development that students do, just like learning how to, operate and navigate society, and teachers are mentors. And I'm just wondering, like, without a physical school, is there still a space for school to fill those needs? Like, how can teachers ensure that school is still providing social growth? How can they continue to be like effective mentors, outside of a physical space? Like, what do you think educators can do to have schools continue to fill those needs?
Yeah, I think those needs usually are filled because we are the ones that see them more in a week than anyone else. I definitely have taught kids where I saw them more than their parents did. And so they sort of like looked up to me for those, like you said, the social needs, the mentorship, all that. So the first step is definitely having that relationship with the parents and ensuring that parents and teachers are on the same page about the needs of the students and where their children are going to need the most support. You might find that there's a lot of kids that just get on fine. They hop on FaceTime with their friends, they chat with their friends, they play Fortnite with their friends, and it's all good, it's all fine. And then those kids might not need as much support, and they've got a really, really great family structure, they've got a lot of routine. That's great. It's going to be the more vulnerable kids, and that might be harder to touch base with parents for those kids. So I think the teachers can essentially try to reach out, see how things are going, ask how, the learning's going at home, what they're doing. And if they're having trouble with, parental contact, and this is me again speaking from like an intermediate senior level, it might obviously not work very well for primary, but actually checking in with the kids and saying like, hey, here as an assignment, like, tell me like how your days have been going. What's your routine? Like, write down what your routine's been like. Because I'm thinking of like from an English assignment, a great kind of, journaling piece would be a really nice little assignment to do. And just checking in with the kids and seeing how we can maybe support them. Can we give them like an organizer for their day, like a routine schedule kind of thing? Can we assign them something that's a little more, socially based? Can we assign group projects that they can work on in Google Docs and on Zoom? Like, can we implement things that encourage more socializing from a distance, obviously?
Right. There was an anecdote that you mentioned a few moments ago that brought one of the questions I had to mind, like a little bit more urgently, and maybe want to jump to it now. You mentioned the student living on a boat.
Yes.
So that makes me think about students who are economically disadvantaged, and specifically the way distance learning can impact students who are economically disadvantaged. We mentioned the idea of like, like a student might not have access to a laptop or an iPad, but even just from like the position of like data caps, if a student does have an iPad or a laptop and they have a teacher who their approach to, creating routine for the students is to do video streaming for like several hours a day, then in the US, where there's aggressive data caps for most ISPs, that can be pretty impactful toward hitting that cap. Now, there are a few ISPs in the US who have so generously suspended their caps while we're in the pandemic, but that's not universal, certainly. How can educators ensure that they're not putting additional undue pressure on economically disadvantaged students, just by virtue of like creating a lesson plan? Like if somebody wants to do a whole bunch of video it's going to impact kids?
Yeah, I was thinking of this. It's such a tricky question because you're already making an assumption that students have, one, the technology at home to access this, which some of them don't and can't afford. I know, like, me growing up, like, I was one of these kids who was pretty disadvantaged economically, and anytime something had to be, like, typed up for an assignment, I'd have to, like, go to my friend's house and use her computer. So it's such a difficult thing. So I've kind of been looking at it as like, this is really an exercise in knowing your students, in knowing your area that you're teaching in, like you say the catchment area, knowing what that demographic is like. So it might require more work from the teachers, not just doing videos. Maybe they have to start looking at doing it more as like worksheets, and that's not ideal. But it might be necessary. Maybe it goes more towards project-based learning, which kind of takes up more time and creates a lot more use of different skills and sort of cumulative skills and inquiry, so that for a week you've got a student who's just kind of like working on something rather than watching videos every day. So you've got to be creative, know who you're teaching to, and know what they have access to. I'd say the one thing that every teacher absolutely should be doing is getting in touch with the board, the district, whoever is in charge of their school area, and asking them if they are providing tech to these students that might not have it. Because I know in the area that I work in, we've been giving out Chromebooks to the sort of like students with sort of less tech at home, and the parents have been coming in and picking up Chromebooks to bring home to them. So make sure that you are finding out if that's happening so that you can direct students if they need it.
Yeah. As my own coworkers were preparing to shift to work from home themselves, I found out that fortunately it seems like here in the Phoenix area, most school districts were doing that and sending kids home with Chromebooks, if they didn't have resources available at home. And that was what got me thinking about, like, well, heck, if we send them home with a Chromebook, that doesn't necessarily impact what their data caps are.
Mm-hmm. That's just such a tricky thing, because it's like we really want to still have that face-to-face with students, but the data, because I think the data caps here in Canada are pretty generous.
Yep.
We're okay. So I guess that the advice I would have for the data would be to keep everything as like project-based off of tech as much as possible, if you know that that's going to be an issue.
So something that I don't have here in my notes, but it's kind of like come to mind as a result of some of these prompts, is something that I've seen lots of like talk online in the last couple of weeks about, like, helping your kid who's now having to learn from home, or, distance learning for your child. And then different conversations, which are about how to create your own work from home space and how to, manage your work-life balance when you're working from home. But I haven't seen these conversations integrated with each other, which is that you have parents who are, best case scenario, home, socially distant, and are, if they have an employer who can facilitate it, working from home. But these are going to be the same people who now have kids who are learning from home. And how do you manage that both from like a mind share perspective, a physical space perspective? Because you are going to be, I guess, balancing both. Like you might be working on the presentation for the pitch to the Johnson Company at the same time your kid needs to learn geometry. And
it's tough. It's tough. I mean, I'm working at home. I currently live in like a 600 square foot apartment. It's pretty tiny. And I'm working with my partner who's also working at home. Right. So even two grown adults right now, we are struggling being that close to each other all the time. So I can't even imagine how hard parents are having it right now, having to take on all these different roles simultaneously. So it's really, really tough in terms of younger kids. And honestly, that's why I went into intermediate senior level teaching, because I can't even comprehend how someone can be around like a 5-6-year-old that long, keeping them entertained, making sure they're learning, doing it constantly. It sounds like a nightmare. So I guess it's about that same time management, and it's about the space and making sure that you are giving them activities that are appropriate length for their age, which is tricky the younger they are. Because I remember my teacher's college professor told me something like their age plus maybe like 5 minutes is about how long they can focus, which is tricky sometimes. So one technique that I really give people pretty often is called the Pomodoro technique, the tomato timer. You can get it online. It's a really simple little tool that if you Google it, it'll come up. And it's a little timer that gives you like input, like your age, or if you like have high focus, low focus, and it will basically get you a timer for how long you should work uninterrupted, and then a little timer for how long you should have a break, timer for how long you should work, timer for how long you should break. And I even use it working at home as like a 30-year-old woman. So it's really, really helpful. It can get the kids kind of like focused for a certain amount of time. And then in terms of like what they can be doing in that time, it's tough because you've got to give them something that will go on for a while, that will allow them the space away from you. So inquiry-based activities are really good. That means like research stuff, basically giving them a question that they have to examine, giving them, you know, a project that they'll have to like come up with and come up with a question for it, and then do the research and then put it all together. Maybe a physical aspect to it for our more tactile learners. Yeah, there's a lot you can do, but it takes planning. So maybe try doing some of the planning after your work hours, like we do as teachers. All my evenings for a very long time have been spent figuring out what to do the next day with the kids. So it's the same kind of thing.
I want to ask a little bit of like, how do you envision parent-teacher conferences if and when they like happen again? Do you expect, because I imagine parents would be a lot more gracious than like they normally are. My mom has been a math teacher since like forever. And like, I remember going to those and like seeing how these parents that, because they expect the teacher to be like the person that be most contact with their kid because, you know, they're at work or whatever. But like now that's all kind of like mashed together. And like, would that just be like some weird like 50-person Zoom call? Like, I don't know. What do you think that would actually play out as?
I think it'll be pretty straightforward in terms of like a Zoom or a FaceTime or a Skype or anything like that. Setting the same schedule. You know, my parent-teacher conferences that I had were 10 minutes long. If you really wanted to have something longer, we could book something another night. Because I think 10 minutes is kind of like all you really need to really get to the bottom of like how things are going, what needs to be worked on. That's it. And anything longer, you're just going to kind of get into some deeper stuff that might cause issues. So I think, yeah, it'll be that sort of straightforward, scheduled time, Zoom. If parents don't have the technology, even, you know, we'll go old fashioned, have a phone call. We can do that. And I think, yeah, there's definitely going to be a lot more understanding on the end of the parents. Mm-hmm. I've seen a lot of tweets along the lines of let's all pay teachers $1 million a year, things like that. And yeah, because I mean, if you've got one kid at home and you're with them for 8 hours a day, we've got the kids for 8 hours a day, 30 at a time, and they're trying to add more, all learning in different ways and all coming in with different attitudes and different problems. So I think as hard as it is for parents, they can kind of, again, me being that sickeningly positive person, they can look at it as they've got one kid they know super well and they love more than anything in the world, so they want nothing but the best for this one kid. That's a pretty good thing if you're thinking of who you're trying to teach.
It's a pretty strong foundation, yeah.
So earlier we were talking about like data caps and the availability of laptops and tablets. I wanted to get around to dragging giant corporations then, but this might be a good opportunity to drag them now. So, like, part of distance learning in the last month has been, by necessity, all of these different educational systems and school systems having to climb into much closer, much more intimate relationships with Microsoft and Google and Zoom. And I don't know, as somebody who defines his own economic views as like, as a democratic socialist, holy shit, that makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to kind of get your bead on it, because whenever I see education get married to any kind of like long-term intrinsic corporate allegiance, it makes me real super duper uncomfortable. Gosh, this is a leading question.
Yeah. I mean, I might even argue with you, so don't worry.
Please argue with Brian. Please do it.
Yeah.
I love it when people argue with Brian. Please do. Because, like, I already want to argue with Brian.
I totally understand. The reservations people have about aligning themselves with something like Google, Microsoft, et cetera, et cetera. I get it. Even when I was teaching, there were certain kids who would come to me and be like, Miss, I don't really want to have a Google account. I think it's creepy. And I'm like, oh, well, too bad, kid. Either you get one or you fail. Sorry. So I totally understand. And I know more and more the privacy thing is becoming really terrifying. So the way that I have approached it, because my previous school was an entirely Google school. Like, we had people from Google coming in, doing training sessions with us, doing training sessions with the kids. I had a little Google ambassador pin that I wore on my bag and on my jacket all the time. We were like full Google. Now, having said that, I did take it as an opportunity to teach my students about the importance of privacy, fine print, security in their own online footprint, all that kind of stuff. So it's a new thing that we have to broach with the students. 20 years ago when you had computer classes, when you went to that one classroom with like the giant computers, there was no conversation about what you were putting online, or like there was no conversation about like MySpace and how dangerous it was or whatever. It's something that is now very relevant. So having these in the schools, we are absolutely forced to teach kids about privacy and security, which is a good thing. Whether or not they listen, that's a different story. The other reason I was kind of okay with the Google sort of aspect of my school was because it did give some students who normally wouldn't have certain tech at home the chance to have it. So Google provided all of our students with a Chromebook because we signed up to be a Google school. So they gave very, very low cost Chromebooks to each and every one of our students. And some of them who had like never even had a phone in their life were like unbelievably excited. It was like the best day for them. So that was something that like, it kind of, maybe a little bit of bribery, I don't know, but I was a little bit excited about that, seeing those kids so happy to do that. And they learned some skills that I think for a lot of them will be really useful in the future. I know I used Google Docs like literally every other minute when I was teaching, sharing resources via Google Drive with my other teachers, using slides. I use it all the time. And so if these kids are learning how to use some of these apps and learning the sort of intuitive nature of similar programs, I think it puts them at a little bit of an advantage going into college, university, workplace, whatever they're going. They're already a step ahead. So as much as we try to stay away from big, horrible corporations that we all hate, obviously, it's a little bit of our day-to-day life. We kind of have to do it. There are options for smaller companies. I used one for a long time called Edmodo, which I think is sort of integrated a little bit with Microsoft and Google, but for the most part, they're their own independent company. Mm-hmm. So it is possible to find ones that don't sidle up, but then you're a little more limited in terms of what you can do.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's such a, because you're telling me about all of these like good byproducts, like kids getting access to technology that they wouldn't normally have access to, and just building like technological utility skill sets that they wouldn't have had otherwise, which is obviously going to put them ultimately in a different position when navigating both the workforce one day and social spaces. And then on the other hand, I'm just thinking about Google, and in my head, just picture them like Joe Camel handing out cigarettes to 8-year-olds. I'm like, God damn it.
Yeah. I think we've got to think like, yes, there obviously is a financial motive. Obviously. Yeah. They would not do it for any other reason. But we have to also think like, are they Joe Cam? Are they literally handing out something that's going to kill these children, or are they handing something out that's going to keep them as customers for life?
Yeah, and the answer is the latter. They are not handing out cigarettes to 8-year-olds. They are handing out technology and hope, and from their perspective, I guess hopefully creating fealty, which is why they suck, but the technology is good.
Yes.
It's
tough. It's cult-like, but we have to look at the harm versus benefit. Like, it might be harmful that they're being a little indoctrinated and they're like, oh, I'm a Google person now, but in the end, is it going to help them, get a job and have a better life? It just might for some of them.
So specifically looking at these three, Zoom, Microsoft, and Google, this is a more difficult question as a follow-up. Is there a best cult to join?
For me, it was Google, because Google for Education is very specialized towards education.
Okay.
And they provided a ton of free training for the kids and for the teachers, because oh my God, I was in a Google training one time where there was some teachers who were like, I don't know how to send an email with Gmail. Can you teach me this? And I was like, oh my God. But they did it. They trained these people for how to literally open Gmail and send an email. And they were happy to do it. So, I mean, they do provide a lot of services, and the services that they provide transfer well into then university, college, workplace applications. Mm-hmm. So you can keep your Google Drive that you have as like a kid in school and then transfer it over to a full working adult drive later, which is kind of nice. And the Google for Education, you get Google Classroom, which to me is kind of like the all-encompassing best program to use for distance learning, because it offers, obviously file sharing. You can do video stuff with it. You can have independent conversations with each of the students. You can assign work to individual students or as a whole class. You can set deadlines and reminders. And the number one thing for me was that it provided each student with a very clear calendar and a way to organize themselves, which is like the number one problem when any kid starts using like a Chromebook or a laptop or anything like that. Their technological organization and literacy is just abysmal for the first like year or so after they get it. So it taught them like how to, set their deadlines, how to organize what they had to do, all that stuff. So for me, Google was kind of like the top one.
Okay. And that was what I was expecting to hear. I just have read all these stuff about like just massive issues with both the fine print and then the security failings of Zoom in the last several weeks. And it's like, gosh, that seems like a nightmare. And a lot of people seem to be relying on that particular nightmare right now.
Yeah, definitely.
And obviously, I mean, you know this because of the link I sent you yesterday. Like, obviously, this podcast is in bed with Google and we use their tools and like them. So, like, I'm glad to hear that. Does Google, they have pretty robust security features for, like, individual and corporate users. Like, if you want a 2-factored individual Google Doc, you can.
Yeah.
Do those same kind of security features exist within the classroom functionality?
Yeah, it's even higher, I think, in the classroom. I know, for example, the email addresses that we give to the students, if you choose to, you can like set it so that they can't email outside of that operation. Like, so a student wouldn't be able to email just like a random person, and they can't accept emails from anyone else either. So it only comes from within that organization. So students are, relegated to either emailing each other or emailing a teacher. That's it.
Okay.
Which is like a great security feature to me. You can block so many links and so many like harmful things. Like you can block keywords. We blocked Fortnite as a keyword one time for a good like 6 months. There's a lot you can do to kind of like keep the kids safe, especially dealing with like 11, 12-year-olds who are a little more prone to purposely trying to get themselves in trouble. Yeah, definitely lots of security features there. Once they get a little bit older, you can kind of like take the features out sort of one by one as they get a little more mature. So my like 18-year-olds using Google had like full access to like everything. So yeah, it is pretty good for the younger students especially.
Okay. Well, y'all heard it here first. If you're going to sign up for a cult, make it Google. So one particular component of distance learning that I haven't seen discussed at great length is how this impacts students with disability. My mother and grandmother were educators with a focus on teaching the disabled. And so that was of particular interest to me. Like, how does this translate to those students? Like, so many of those students have something that doesn't look at all like what like the average person on the street would associate with a curriculum. Like, my mother taught life skills to disabled students in like a high school space, like, teaching them how to pay their bills when the time would come, like teaching them how to catch the bus, like what does a job application look like, those kind of things that were going to be necessary skills for folks. And I'm like, what does distance learning for the disabled look like? Because the needs for the disabled are so radically different from individual to individual. And it looks like a lot of the tools which exist assume that at the very least, like a certain level of uniformity for tools will be helpful. And so that got me thinking, like, where does that leave those students and where does that leave those educators?
Yeah, so I'm really fortunate that this has sort of become my area of expertise, because I'm not actually teaching this year. And my God, what a good year to not be teaching, because we had our teachers' strikes for the last 4 months in Ontario where I live. And now this is happening. So I've actually been working for the Learning Disabilities Association of Ontario. And I am one of the sort of content producers, consultants, education experts there. So this has been something that has come up a lot already in my day-to-day working life for the last month or so. And then before that, because our government of Ontario was actually trying to implement distance learning as part of our regular provincial curriculum, which is why the teachers had gone on strike in the first place. And part of the reason that they disagreed so strongly with it was exactly what you're talking about, that students that have disabilities and other special needs can't always engage with this type of learning style. It just does not work for everybody. So there's been a huge discussion in sort of my circles about what this means and how basically we need to respond to it for these students. And the long and short of it is that parents have to almost become full-time teachers for them, which is really tough. It's a tough thing to say to people, and it's a tough thing to try and implement. What we've done in Ontario, and obviously this is kind of Canada focused and something that I'm pretty proud of, is that we've agreed to give money to parents who now need to be unemployed because they have to educate their children. So they're providing a sort of base income for any parent who is now leaving their job because they have to teach. So I'm hoping that in this sense, something like that might follow if we sort of pioneer it, and other people might see that it's really important and helpful. In the UK, they're doing something similar where they have the vulnerable students are still receiving kind of one-on-one support. Again, there's some money being put into that from the government. So we're just hoping that the same thing will follow suit maybe in the US. So maybe you guys keep me updated if that happens. Because the reality is you're expecting a certain level of cognition from a student to be able to navigate distance learning at all. Not even to do the work, but just to be able to access the work. You have to be able to get your laptop open. You have to go to the thing. You have to log in. You have to find the work. You have to find, what dates that is all a huge mental process that some students just cannot cope with. So there does have to be someone there supporting them. We're very, very lucky that there's been more and more online resources coming out for parents and for teachers to support parents. Because one of the things that I'm being asked now in my role where I work by teachers is, what can I actually tell parents? What can I direct them to? What can I do for them? So I can actually, if you guys have notes in this podcast, I can give a huge list of all the websites you should go to right now. If you are a parent or a teacher and you have a student with a learning disability or any kind of special needs, I can give you probably about 15 links that will help you out.
We will definitely happily share that.
Yeah. So for example, just super quick off the top of my head, the website that I run is called LD at the @school. So ld@school.com. .ca because we're Canadian. And right now we're putting up a whole bunch of resources on how can I support my kid with reading at home? How can I support my kid who has a learning disability in math? And we're putting up stuff like how you can turn math into a day-to-day thing. You ask your kid to go to the fridge and count how many of these you have for dinner. How many potatoes do we have for dinner? How many cups of of flour do we need for this recipe if we're going to make cookies together? Like, we've got all these different things that you can be doing at home. So I guess to answer your question, the distance learning for students with these disabilities is still a work in progress, and it is absolutely not where it needs to be for them. And that's a sort of a grim answer, but hopefully this will open our eyes to the fact that this is something that we have to work out, and this is something that absolutely needs a lot of time and resource, energy and research and everything put into it to get these kids a fair chance. Because right now, I worry for those students about their progress.
Well, it also depends. Like, it's very important to understand that, like, your kid may have a learning disability that you aren't aware of, because there's a lot of places in, like, the American public school system where specifically where, like, those kids just get skipped because they figure out a coping mechanism that gets them through whatever the program is, or like their teachers just don't have the time or the resources to be like, hey, like, this is an issue and we need to, like, address it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
I know my little sister is dyslexic and dyspraxic and has a reading disability on top of it. So, like, she's got, like, ADHD and reading disability. So, like, she made it to 3rd grade without actually being able to read, because all she would do is kind of cheat on all of her tests to see what the other kids were doing. And, like, that's how she made it through
definitely.
everything. And she just happened to have a math teacher who noticed, like, hey, she got all these answers right, but she literally flipped every single number.
Yeah.
Like, she wrote all the answers backwards. So, she should get checked out. So if you have a kid who you notice is, like, struggling disproportionately with something, maybe, like, you should check those resources out as well, because you could assist them in ways that their regular classroom learning wouldn't be able to at that time.
Absolutely. And I think that if we're going to, again, me trying to be so positive, this might be an opportunity for some of these students who've gotten away with it because they're in this big class setting to finally have someone go, hang on, I'm working with you one-on-one and you are not getting this, to really see that this is a problem. Because, like you said, there's so many students who find these coping mechanisms that make it all the way through without any help. I'm 31 and I was just diagnosed with ADHD. So, like...
Oh, yep.
It happens. People get real far just by kind of, like, finding the shortcuts. So I think parents have a huge task ahead of them with that. And one of the other things that I was discussing with some of my coworkers is that the other problem with that is that a lot of learning disabilities can be genetic too. So if you've got parents that are already struggling to access some of these materials and access some of these lessons, it's going to be twofold hard for this student, because maybe the parent also has a reading disability or has a math disability. So we have to find ways that we can support these families as a whole, and not even just the students, but the families need the support.
So, speaking to support, one of the functions that school normally has is, if you're a kid, that is a place where you can stick your feelings. I remember when I was in the 9th grade that there was a whole bunch of stuff going on at home, and there was a whole bunch of stuff going on everywhere. And there was in particular there was an English teacher of mine, Mr. Grubb, who definitely got me through all of that. And I'm thinking about all of the absolute litany of shit that kids are potentially dealing with right now. You could have a parent who just lost their job. You could have a parent who just received a nasty-ass letter from a landlord saying, I don't care that you lost your job. You could have sick relatives. You could have sick friends. You could have dead relatives. You could have dead friends. You could have a dead classmate. And the ability to be that emotional anchor, to be that place of safeness. Is there any way that schools and teachers can provide that to students in a virtual space?
Oh, that's a tough one. Yeah, because I mean, what we're really talking about here is grief. It's the loss of normalcy, it's the loss of a routine, it's the loss of socialization and friendships, and like you said, potentially a loss of an actual human life. So I think it's really hard for that same level of support to be there, not in person. Because I know that they're encouraging teachers to not one-on-one video chat with students. I know that they're saying that's not a great idea. Try not to do that. So like the only avenue that you really have for a private conversation is kind of gone with that. It really comes down to, again, parents now need to take that role of understanding what a change in their child looks like. So I know, like, as a teacher, we see them every day. We see them at the same time every day. It's very easy to notice when something is off and different with a student. So I would recommend to parents to sort of look for that. If there's anything that really seems off or different, to maybe not jump on it right away, give it a little bit of time, because obviously this is a weird situation and we're all kind of acting a little bit weird and wacky. But looking at grief resources is probably going to be the most helpful thing, because there's probably a lot of students who don't want to talk to their parents. I know when you're like 13, 14, the last thing you absolutely want to do is talk to your parents about your feelings. But looking at that kind of from afar, how can you facilitate them working through their feelings? How can you facilitate them to have some time to themselves, and maybe also time with their friends on like Skype? Ensuring privacy is so important, because, you know, school is their time away from their parents. So they get to kind of like be themselves and be with their friends. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of them feel comfortable kind of sharing at school, because they're away from that. So giving them that privacy, giving them a little bit of time to process and work things through. But again, if it's really kind of noticing those changes, big time changes, because that's when you have to step in. I noticed a kid, for example, like ate lunch every single day, had the same lunch all the time, had his favorite snacks. One day comes in on a Monday not eating. For the next like week wasn't eating. And I'm like, all right, something's weird. Like, that's a big change. So yeah, just being aware of that, and then understanding that you probably will need to step up and do something a little bit uncomfortable. And don't get upset if they push you away, but just be available.
Well, you've given us a lot to chew on, and thank you so much for the offer to share those resources for students who might be dealing with a disability in distance learning, or like, you know, you and Tegan mentioned, you know, may not have any kind of diagnosis, but still benefit from those resources. But I think we would probably benefit from shifting gears a little bit and maybe talking about something which is not so hard here in quarantine time. So let's talk games.
Yes, let's lighten the mood a little bit.
Yeah. Tegan, I think you had some questions?
You know, I like games. I come from a family where, like, when I was at home, as a result of, like, my sister's struggle to focus on stuff, I wasn't allowed to play video games for more than 2 hours a day on weekends.
My goodness.
So that's where I come from. What's, like, your relationship with video games, like, growing up and then getting into the more, like, modern day time?
So I grew up in a very, very poor household. Like, the kind of, like, are we going to have dinner tonight? Should I stock up while I'm at school kind of thing?
Mm-hmm.
So I actually did not have a system for a very, very long time. I remember going to my friend's house and like seeing her brother playing like Double Dragon and being like, oh my god, I really want to play that game so bad. Or like playing like Super Mario 3 or whatever and being like, oh my god, can I please play with you? Like, it was this kind of like out of reach thing for me. So growing up, never really had games. I think the first time I ever had a console of my own was when I was about 12 years old. My grandmother bought me and my sister a Nintendo 64. So we had a Nintendo 64. I had one game. I had Diddy Kong Racing for Nintendo 64, and I played the absolute bejesus out of that game. Like, I beat it probably like 15 times. Like, it was all I had. Still probably one of my top games for N64 to this day. And then I remember I saved up all my money from like my little paper out that I had to, and like doing odd jobs. And the first game I ever bought with my own money was Ocarina of Time, which was like, at the time it was something like $80 or something ridiculous like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds about
It's
right.
a good game. That's a good
But
game, though.
It was so expensive. It was so expensive. And again, played that till it was like in the ground, like cartridge, like basically falling apart, controller falling apart. We rented some games every so often from Blockbuster on a weekend, but that was about it. That was like all I really had. So my like childhood gaming is pretty limited compared to most people. Like when people talk about like all the nostalgia of like playing Mario and playing Sonic, I'm like, I don't know. I didn't do that. So I think it was really when I got my first real job and I had a friend who was playing World of Warcraft in 2005 when it first came out, who brought me over to show me, and I was like, whoa, this is the craziest thing I've ever experienced in my life. Watching this like huge open world game. I had no idea about the lore, the background of World of Warcraft or anything, but I wanted to play it. So I saved up my money again from my job and I bought a PC and I got World of Warcraft. And ever since that day when I like first loaded it up and made my first character, I was like, oh my God, this is what gaming is like. And then since then I've been like way into it. Like I've like always got new consoles. So I had like my PS2, PS3, had PS4, you know, upgraded some of my gaming PCs. Like I have been into it since then.
Nice. So, like, we've noticed, obviously, like, a lot of the games that you've been streaming on Twitch specifically are from, like, SNES or N64 time. Is that mostly because, like, that was your first, like, major console? And it's, like, the thing that brings you, like, the most joy? Or is it, like, is there something else going on there?
So, the main reason we're streaming all this is because my boyfriend is a collector. He has well over, I think it's, like, 800 retro games, mostly Super Nintendo. Mm-hmm. Like, the collection is worth well into the thousands, probably several thousand. So we have all these games. His goal is to collect the entire Super Nintendo library.
That is such a dark rabbit hole. Oh, God.
Yeah. Believe me, I know. I have cases and cases of doubles and triple cartridges just, like, sitting around our apartment because he buys them all in these lots just to get one game.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's pretty intense. So I think he's at about 600 in the Super Nintendo, and then we have about 150, 200 more in the Nintendo and Nintendo 64 games. So that's the main reason, is just because it's all here. It's all there. So he bought them with the intention of just kind of like collecting. And then I moved in and I was like, are you going to play these games? And that's where it started.
Neat. It sounds like it's probably your first time through a lot of, like, the catalog, just because it sounds like he's got a lot of the catalog.
Yes. Yeah, so probably my first time playing every single one of these games. So I played, like, Donkey Kong Country 2 the other day, and, like, I think I remember, like, seeing someone play it as a kid, but I've never played it. So, like, my first run through with it, same thing. I had never even played a Mario game. Like a full Mario game before, so I was like trying to play like Super Mario, and then I was playing Mario 3 and all these other things. Yeah, it's my first time through so many of these classic games.
God, what a feeling! Like, no, I'm just.
Brian just wishes he was you right now because he's just like, if I could play these games cry, again honestly. For the first time.
Yeah, that's exactly where I'm at. Like, oh my God, like. Just the idea of playing Mario 3 for the first time. Oh my goodness. Also, like, man, specifically Super Nintendo collecting is such a deep rabbit hole. Like, these two will tell you that, like, last year I was on a real tear with, like, this game series Final Fight where I was like, yep, this is my life now. Like, Mike Hagar, he's my guy. He punches oil drums to get turkeys. And...
Oh, real quick, Brian, before I forget, two things. One, you should watch High Score Girl. It's about two kids who like go through old school arcades and stuff. It's an anime.
Cool.
And shit, I just forgot the second thing. Whatever, continue.
When I started collecting the series, I was like, I had my Final Fight 1, I had my Final Fight 2, and then I saw what the average price was for Final Fight 3 for the Super Nintendo was going for, on average, about $180 for the cart. And I'm like, yep, this is my life now. And
yep.
And so that's why I say that is a dark-ass rabbit hole.
Yeah, it's pretty intense. And I mean, we've only been together like just over a year, and we're quarantined together. It's good times. So
you're speedrunning. Speedrunning
the
dating
situation.
Speedrunning
the relationship. So he asked for Christmas. He was like, I just want you to get me some games that I don't have. And I was like, all right, no problem. Thinking like, this will be fine. I'll just go on eBay and look for some games. Easy peasy. Oh my goodness. Like, I ended up getting him, so I got him a couple games, and one of them was Pocky and Rocky.
Okay.
And which is fine. You know, it was like a $70-ish game, which is not a problem. Yep. And then I was like, oh, there's a Pocky and Rocky 2. That I can get him both of them.
Oh no.
And I look and I'm like, this kit, the cheapest one was like $350. I was like, holy hell.
Yeah. Oh God.
That maxes out Christmas. That's it. You get 2 things and that's it.
I had no idea. And a huge collection, a part of his collection is all new in box too as well.
Oh, God damn it.
Yeah, he has some like still with the shrink wrap on it.
Oh no.
So he has like a Mortal Kombat in shrink wrap, perfect condition. That would, I think we looked it up, it would go for like well over like a couple thousand, something like that.
So that's a game you just can't play.
So we can't play that one. He has a Super Mario 64 in shrink wrap as well. Can't play that. So,
yeah, buy a second copy just so you can play it. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's pretty intense. Pretty intense.
Wow.
Oof.
Oh, I'm both like happy for your experience to get to play so many of these games for the first time, and I also just want to like shake your boyfriend and go, good God, man. Settle down.
Some people buy cars, some people go on like fancy vacations, like this is what he does.
Yep.
Could be worse.
Mm-hmm.
It could be worse, yeah.
I mean, that's what I'd say to my mom. I'd be like, Mom, I want this anime figure. It's $500. Could be worse. Could be heroin.
I say that to him all the time. I'm like, well, at least you're not addicted to, crack cocaine. Like,
Great.
This is better than that.
Could be meth.
Just a different kind of addiction. It's fine. It's
exactly.
Fine. As long as it makes you happy. So, like, you're using a lot of original hardware for your stream.
Mm-hmm.
Is it making it, like, hard to set everything up? Or, like...
It was easier than we expected. Remember when I first started talking about streaming, everyone was like, oh, just use the ROMs. And then I would like show people like the picture of our collection and be like, well, I have all of these. Like, why wouldn't I just use them? And everyone was telling me how difficult it was going to be. And it was going to be like the hardest thing I've ever done in my life to set up, retro gaming. It really wasn't that hard. I mean, we spent a lot of money on the setup. It was fairly expensive to get, the capture card, to get all the cables. We had to get some adapters, a couple different extending cords for the consoles because it's hard to sit on the couch while still being plugged into the console because the cords were so short.
Mm-hmm.
So, fairly expensive setup, and there's like wires all over our apartment now. But in the end, like, it really wasn't as hard as everyone made it out to be. And there really just is something about using the original hardware that I really like. I just feel like if I had used a ROM, like, I don't feel like I would have experienced it in the same way. There's something very cathartic about picking up that, like, plastic controller and using it. It's just so good.
Something tactile, something emotional, like the way you connect with it is different.
Yeah, we have a Switch as well, and we got the Super Nintendo Switch wireless controllers. So any of the games that, like, we don't have or that we want to, like, just, like, jump in and out of, it's pretty fun just to even use that with the Switch. Or we play a lot of Mario Maker 2, and, like, using the SNES controller for the Switch for that is, like, game-changing. It makes it so much more fun.
So, all right, brief Mario Maker detour, because I have strong Mario Maker feelings. Have you found the overall quality of levels out there for Mario Maker 2 to be lower than those available for Mario Maker 1?
There's some that are really like you just kind of get into it and you're like, I really wish I could quit without having any, because I do the versus one a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And like getting into it and you're like, I really wish I could just quit because this sucks. That happens a lot. But the ones that are good are real good. Like the ones that are good are like so worth it. So it kind of evens out. I'm also very emotionally invested, not as invested as my partner is. He is one of the screamers throwing the controller when he loses kind of thing. So I think he would argue that it's just as good as the first one.
Okay. And if he's into that whole Kaizo scene, like I can see that. But like there were a lot more levels that were out there for the first one where the focus wasn't like the Kaizo, please do a spin jump off of this falling P block, like
where it was just a straight up like get to the end kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Less murder.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm up and down on it. There's some days when I'm really, really like into it and I want the complicated ones, and then some days I'm like, I just want a straight up race. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
right.
It's the whole randomizing thing can be a real hit and miss.
I want to talk to you a little bit about Twitch. Like, how has your experience been with like user engagement? Because you talked about how you didn't have a great time with Patreon. How has it been with Twitch for you?
It's been a completely different experience because Patreon, I guess it's a different clientele out there looking for something a little different, especially when you're already kind of like a public figure. They come on Patreon and they want something that they've never seen before. So I got a lot of requests for things that I was not willing to put on my Patreon. Yes. A lot of very direct requests. And that was not cool. I didn't like that. Whereas with Twitch, I think because I've got it on my Instagram and on my Twitter, which are very wrestling based, I've gotten a lot of like people who follow me from the wrestling community, whether it be fans or even other wrestlers, which is super fun, come on and they just kind of like have a little chat. And the way we kind of have it set up is, so me and my partner do it together because he knows a lot more about the games than I do. So he's kind of there helping me navigate the ins and outs of the games. And one of us will be playing and one of us will kind of be on the chat. So we get wrestlers that come in and like have a little chat with us and see how things are going. We get fans that come in that talk to us about the games. We get people who literally come in just because they saw our tag is a certain game and they wanted to see it and they ask how we're finding it. I have, friends who have nothing to do with streaming or wrestling that just come in because they are bored at the moment. Mm-hmm. My partner's family, they come in and like watch just because they want to see us and they like us. So it's been really like wholesome and kind of sweet, everyone on Twitch, which is really nice. Much, much better than it was on Patreon. And I think it's because I'm offering something that they want to see rather than them begging for something that I'm not putting on there.
Yeah, I hopped into the stream last night while you were running through Ocarina, and it was a really chill vibe in there. It was a fun room to hang out in, and like the people in chat seemed cool. Like, glad to hear it's going well.
Yeah, no, it's really fun. It was something that we had sort of like thought about doing for a really long time because I remember the first day that I came over to his apartment on our very first date, I was like, I really hope that you're playing all these video games. And then, a year later, I still hadn't really played them. We weren't set up for it because the Super Nintendo was just kind of like in a box somewhere. So I took it on myself to take everything out and get everything set up. And then I thought, this is a thing people do. Like, people want to see something different on Twitch maybe, because I think a lot of Twitch is a lot of newer games. A lot of people playing things like Fortnite, COD, all that kind of stuff. And I was like, here's something a little different, something that maybe you wouldn't see as often with original hardware. So now's a good time to do it since we're not doing anything else.
Yeah, so about that, like, since most of us aren't really doing much else, how has quarantine impacted your schedule? Are you streaming more? Are you getting, like, more people stopping by?
Yeah, I think we're definitely streaming more. I'm still working and he's still working as well, so we're not streaming like all the time. But there's definitely a lot more time in the day to do it, and we're a little more flexible. I think before, when I had been at work, it would have been a little more stressful and we could have only done it at certain times. But now, like, I'm going to hop on like right after this and we're going to play through a little more Ocarina, and then I'll probably take a break, have some dinner, hop back on. Because, yeah, like, I'm not occupied by much else at the moment. Like we're pretty stocked up in terms of all of our necessities here. We're doing okay, so it's a nice way to pass the time, and we do it together, which is the nice thing. It's a good opportunity for us to spend some time together and not want to kill each other, which is really good.
It's definitely a win. Yeah. What other games are you thinking about streaming, possibly like after Ocarina?
So we're going to try and get through some of the more obscure Super Nintendo games that he has. I'm not exactly sure what that looks like yet. I think one that we're going to do is Earthbound, just because it's so unbelievably wacky and weird. I watched a little video on it and I was like, oh my god, I need to play this game. It just looks so intense and strange. So Earthbound's probably going to be one. I really want to play Chrono Trigger because I played Chrono Trigger really briefly when it was out on the DS. And I want to play it in its original format because I think that would be pretty cool. I think, a lot of RPGs that I because I love RPGs. I really, really, really do. And I haven't played that many on older systems. So Super Mario RPG is another one that I wanted to do. Final Fantasy VI is another one I wanted to do. So I think we're going to do a bunch of RPGs coming up, which will take up some time. And then my gaming myself has been mostly newer games. So I did want to do some of the newer ones that I really like. For example, I'd love to play through Horizon Zero Dawn again. It was a great one. I'm like, my top series of games is the Fallout games. Like, I love Fallout games more than anything. So I want to play through some Fallout games again and maybe finally be a bad guy because I never have the courage to be mean in my games. So do that. I own Red Dead Redemption 2. I haven't even opened it yet. That's another one that I want to play. I have a couple Assassin's Creed games that I've never played. So there's a lot that we have to do.
Sounds like a good time. I'm all the way about it.
Yeah.
Are you thinking it's going to be more of like a flip back and forth? Like, hey, today we're doing a retro game. Like, after we finish this, we'll do a modern game? Or is it going to be like, you're splitting it like, before dinner we do retro, after dinner we do modern? Or like...
I think...
is there just like whatever you feel like sort of thing?
Well, at the moment, it's kind of whatever we feel like, because we're so new. We're so new to this. Like, we have literally no idea what we're doing. We're just kind of getting through it. So at the moment, we're just kind of like, this looks like fun. I kind of want to play this today. It seems good. I think once we get a little more of a schedule and we kind of get a little more of a feel for what our channel is going to be like, we might end up doing like a flip between modern and retro.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to do a little bit more of me playing stuff for the very first time and kind of getting the reaction to it. So like, I have yet to play like Super Mario Brothers. Like, I have not played the one for SNES yet. So like, that's one that I want to do for like the first time. And do some reactions to that. It'd be fun. But yeah, we're right now we're just making it up as we go along. So hopefully it's not terrible.
I mean, I feel like everybody's making it up as they go along.
Yeah. Now you're already partnered, right? Like when I was in there last night, I think I saw a subscribe button.
Yeah, we are Twitch affiliates now. I don't know how that happened. Again, he's the one. He runs all the technical side of stuff. He just makes me look good and sit in front of the camera and play games. So he's like, yeah, we're affiliates now. We can get donations and subscribes and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I don't know how he did that. That was great.
Okay. Well, very cool. I am sure that it is in the massive archive of games, but I've gotta put a vote in for Act Racer.
Okay.
Because it is weird as all hell. It's like city management and city building. And also, like, when you're not city building, it's kind of like a side-scrolling brawl beat-em-up game where you're a god.
That's so weird.
Yes, and it's like...
Racing. Okay.
Yeah, and so if, like, the strangeness of, Earthbound is one of the things that, like, drew you to it, like, Act Racer is also a very strange game.
I love a good weird game.
Yeah.
That reminds me, so another one that we were planning on streaming, this was actually my Christmas present this year, so I got him Pocky and Rocky and War of the Gems and some other ones. My Christmas present was a Dreamcast, and all the controllers, everything, all the accessories, and the game Seaman.
Oh, hell yes.
That was the present I got for Christmas this year. So that is something I would like to stream as well, because we figured out the little hack to skipping time ahead a little bit to make it a little more palatable. Otherwise, we'd be watching it for hours and it's super weird. So yeah, that's one of the other ones we're going to get to.
I remember playing Seaman when it came out, and when Seaman asked me if I was voting for Bush or Gore, it was such a vibe. And like, it's one of those like weird things that like dates the game so much now. Like between that and like the Leonard Nimoy narration that just makes me go like, oh, sad Leonard Nimoy.
It a weird vibe to it. I played it a little bit, and so I wanted to play it through again because we only touched it just like very briefly. But when it was like, oh, this is your birthday, so you must be this kind of person, and it had me like right on, and I was like, oh my god, I don't like this anymore, and I got really freaked out. So, and it was like, you could tell it that you were a teacher, and it would like tell you what it thought about that. Oh, it was too much. It was just too much for me, and I had to put it down for.
Yeah, I loved the Dreamcast because it seemed like that was when Sega finally like reached full weird. It gone before its time. So sad.
Yeah, that's one thing that we're looking at right now is because we have the Dreamcast, but we don't have a huge Dreamcast library. So we're looking for more Dreamcast games at the moment. We are people that would go to flea markets like every Saturday, and my partner still goes down to garage sales like every weekend when he can. Obviously not now, but like if anyone out there listens and has some Dreamcast games that you don't know what to do with, just hit me up. We will take them off your hands.
Like somewhere, like, okay, I'm speaking to you Oklahoma listeners. We don't know who you are, but if any of you have a copy of Typing of the Dead, it is time to rehome it. It just the game that teaches typing while you kill zombies.
Oh, that's amazing. That's right up my alley.
Yep. Man, the Dreamcast. So I think I've got one more gaming question then when they would like to pivot again, which is that like 2 of the games that you have streamed have got these like incredibly specific and loud subcultures associated with them, which are Super Punch-Out and Ocarina of Time. Mm-hmm. Like the Super Punch-Out people are like, are you playing on an HD TV or a CRT? I need to know. Like, so that way I can like properly evaluate your performance. Like, and I'm like, did you draw any of those weirdos when you played Super Punch-Out?
No, we like I said, because we're very, very, very new. Okay. We're kind of just like scratching the surface. But I know the communities you're talking about. Yeah. Because again, with my partner being so into the collecting scene, he is in like multiple like Facebook buy and sell groups, and he's in like multiple gaming groups and all these kinds of things. And I see what goes on. And of course, like I've gone through Twitch and I've kind of like looked at some of the chats and seen some of the streams that people are doing. And my thought is like, I'm just not into it. Like, I'm just not into it. So if someone's bringing that energy of like, yeah, but are you using this or are you not? Like, yeah, you can just like leave my chat. Like, that's whatever. I'm 1000% doing this because it's fun, because we have 700-800 games that should probably be played, and because I really don't have a lot else going on right now, and even when this is over, it'll still be something I do for fun. So I really don't think that that's going to be a part of what we're doing at all. Even like if people try to get me into it, it's just not going to happen, I don't think.
The Ocarina of Time community is thankfully a little healthier. It's just like if you start to get into the speedrunning stuff for them, like, oh man.
God, yeah. I mean, like,
it's a whole scene.
I looked up the record. It was like 3 hours and 45 minutes or something like that. Like, I'm already at like 3 hours, and I'm only just getting to I just beat the Dodongo's Cavern. So like, my aim is to finish it this weekend, which I think is doable, today and tomorrow, and maybe a bit of Monday because it's a long weekend for us. But like, if I don't, like, oh well, like, no one died, everything's gonna be okay, like, it's fine. So yeah, I'm not really about that kind of gaming. I just want to have fun. I just want to have fun, and I hang out with my boyfriend when I do it. It's fun. That's it.
Cool. So let's talk brightly colored blocks.
Yeah.
So like, there is a growing presence, especially because of the quarantine, of people who are on Twitch doing IRL streaming. Mm-hmm. They're not necessarily playing a game. They're doing like either cooking or crafting or some other creative activity. And there is a growing number of Twitch streamers who are doing Lego assembly on Twitch. And you already have, as part of your public personality, a reputation associated with Lego. Mm-hmm. Have you considered doing any Lego streams?
Oh, I talked about that this morning with my partner, and he was like, you know what? That is a great idea. The main problem with Lego is that it takes up space that we just don't have. Like, there's so many Lego sets that I would love to have, but like, where do I put them when they're done? Like, that's the problem. So the second Christmas present I got alongside Seaman was the Simpsons Lego house, which was awesome. And like we built that and I had a great time doing it. So I can see myself definitely doing something like that on Twitch if it comes up naturally. But I don't see myself like going out of my way to get more Lego just because of the space issue. I think my boyfriend, he really wants the Millennium Falcon, like desperately, badly wants the Millennium Falcon. So if he cracks and spends, his $900 on that, then definitely that will go on Twitch.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
Can you give us some insight as to how this whole brightly colored block thing got started?
Yeah, I love that you're calling it brightly colored blocks because I did get a cease and desist from the Lego company and they told me to stop talking about it and stop using it. But anyway, so it really came up because I had a reputation for death matches when I first started wrestling. So I did like barbed wire and thumbtacks and all that kind of like gross stuff in death matches. And then when I got booked for a company called Interspecies Wrestling, they were kind of talking about doing some different stuff, something a little bit more out there and wacky and wild. And what they came up with was this idea that when people watch deathmatch wrestling, not many people have fallen into a pile of thumbtacks, so they don't really know what that feels like. Same thing with like no one's ever really fallen into a pile of like barbed wire, so they don't really know what that feels like. But everybody has stepped on a Lego. Everyone knows what that feels like. Everyone knows it sucks. So they thought if we did this wrestling match where people fall on Lego or step on Lego, everyone is going to just cringe because everybody knows what that's like. And it very quickly became this like viral thing. People stepping on Lego became really big in mainstream. So we capitalized on it and I did my first match. I think it was in like 2009 or 2010 where I did my very first Lego match. And I was not the first person to do it, but I was the person who kind of like took it and ran with it, I think more than anyone. And since then, I've probably done, I want to say 30, maybe more, 50 Lego matches. And every time I get booked now, people like bookers will ask like, you're going to do the match, right? You're going to have a Lego match. And then I'm like, yeah, if you provide the Lego, because that shit is expensive. Like, so it just became part of who I was as a wrestler, and then I capitalized on it, I guess. And I do like building Lego in my spare time. Like, I do have a lot of it, and I do like it. So it kind of, it was good both ways because it gave me an excuse to buy more, and people like to buy it for me, so that's great.
Awesome. There was something that you mentioned I wanted to, like, check on that. Like, did you individually get cease and desisted, or did Interspecies Wrestling get cease and desisted?
So it's been a couple different emails. So Interspecies Wrestling was cease and desisted, and then I got a message from them on Twitter as well, being like, "Hey, people are tagging you in these things. Like, you need to stop." Like, so Interspecies Wrestling got an official legal letter that mentioned one of the matches that I was in on YouTube. And then they also sent me messages on Twitter being like, hey, don't tag us. Don't let people tag you.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
They are not fans of mine.
So that particular event, Boner Jam 4, Balls Out,
yes,
was actually the first match of yours that I saw.
Oh, great.
Yeah. And like, I watched it because I took off all of Mania weekend and was like, I'm just going to gorge myself on wrestling. And that was one of the shows I most enjoyed that weekend. And I remember the thing that, like, my wife and I took away from that match was that Nick Gage just absolutely in no way changes the way he addresses a match when he's having an intergender match. And it was just like, this is the coolest fucking fight. Absolutely wonderful.
Yeah. I love Nick Gage, and I wrestled him since then. And you're exactly right. Like, he changes nothing about what he does. Every time I've wrestled him, he's just been like, yeah, you're gonna die. Like, that's it. Hope you're okay with it. And I'm like, okay, I guess. And there's something about him too. Like, I don't know, like during his entrance, like you just like feel this like vibe of like just like cult like, reverence for him. That's just so amazing. And even my boyfriend's like telling me all the time, he's like, you're my second favorite wrestler because Nick Gage is my first favorite wrestler.
Oh man. God, when I was thinking about like what does COVID-19 mean for wrestling in the future? I'm like, man, this is really going to fuck up Nick Gage's entrance.
Oh, yeah, no, we all need, so we still have to social distance, but still, be part of MDK gang. It's fine.
Yeah, we'll get through it together.
Yep.
So, what is the best way that your fans can support you right now?
I'm really lucky that I, have a job still, so I'm doing okay financially, but if people want to support and just be cool and be buds, please just follow me on Twitter at Addy Starr, follow me on Instagram, Addy Stars and Stripes. Follow us on Twitch because we love getting more followers on Twitch. So it's twitch.tv/LikeStarrScream, Starr with 2 R's. And our name came from the fact that my boyfriend is a frontman for a pro wrestling inspired hardcore band. He's the screamer, if you will. So, you can support us by following us on Twitch. And then he has a band camp as well because he does my entrance music for wrestling. So check them out. They're called Powerbomb. Perfect name for a hardcore inspired band. So they're Powerbomb HC, not bandcamp.com. They're great. Yeah, so just hang out, say hi, follow us. That's all I really ask of anyone, if you want to support people, financially support the people that need it more than I do. So people who are full-time wrestlers, independent wrestlers, they're the ones that need your support more than I do.
I have bought more t-shirt and gear in the last month than I ever have before. Holy shit.
Oh my god, so have I. I literally have gone to all my really good friends in wrestling and been like, what do you have? Send it to me. That's all I want.
Yep. Well, thank you so much for hanging out. I think that we have covered a lot of ground and it's all been really cool. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's been great. I've had a great time. Thank you for having me.
Rocky, you want to take us home?
Sure. Hey everyone, this is our show. It's called Impossible Coin. We do it every week. We don't always have interviews, but sometimes we do, and we're grateful to have them. You can find this podcast wherever podcasts are found. Our stuff is usually on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, or Spotify. We appreciate any reviews that you have for us. Just leave them wherever you found the podcast. There's music in beginning and end of this show. It's produced by our friend Big Soch. You can find his work at soundcloud.com/BigSochNJ. Maybe drop him a line on Twitter at Hillary_Swank. Our logo and t-shirt were designed by Lauren Moran. You can find her on Twitter at Lauren Moran. Consider donating to her Patreon. Like her, we also have a Patreon. It's patreon.com/ImpossibleCoin podcast. Maybe one day it'll be /ImpossibleCoin, but we're going to keep the dream alive. We are also on social media. Brian's on Facebook and Patreon. I'm on Twitter. Tegan's on Tumblr. It's all Impossible Coin. But that's us. That's the show.
Peace.
Bye.
Bye.